Okay, good morning. My name is Kafelo. I'm based in the Department of Economics at University. In Nardos Chuta, I work as research associate with young lives and engage. So today I will share this first presentation, which focuses on health. There are three presentations. The first presentation is by Nardos. Her presentation focuses mainly on these harmful traditional practices such as child marriage and FGM, maternal and child health, and sexual and reproductive health, followed by presentation by Dr. Isa. His presentation focuses on young people with disabilities, and the third one is by Dr. Abla, who will present about mental health issues and well-being. So Nardos will present for 30 minutes because she covers lots of topics. And Dr. Isaac and Dr. Abla each use 10 minutes. So first, I will give the session to Nardos. Nardos, you have only 30 minutes. I will be very strict on time because we have a huge audience and we have to gather as many questions as possible. So,
good morning, all. I will be presenting on topics that are very much interlinked, as you can see: FGM, early marriage, maternal child health, and SRH. So this is just the presentation outline. I will just directly dive into the main findings. From our side, there is this practice of FGM or FGMC practices, which has been done since birth. So some of the sites have shown declines in the practice, while there are still some sites practicing these procedures, and some are also varying by age. The procedure involves different types. The first one is partial or total removal of the external female genitalia, and in some places this is being followed by infiltration, which is narrowing of the vaginal opening. And this happens at different ages. Some are undergoing the procedure in their early infancy, soon after birth, especially in the northern parts of Ethiopia. The others during their early teens, especially before getting married, in most parts of Ethiopia, according to our Young Lives data. So generally the practice is more prevalent in rural areas, with special emphasis from our Young Life sites and that of Oromia sites. So when we see the drivers of FGM, there are different reasons, as you might know. The first and the most reason is the cultural values, especially driven by patriarchal norms. The fact that men always expect their potential wives to undergo the procedure for reasons of controlling their sexuality. And there are also long-standing traditions. For example, in most parts of our sites, undergoing the procedure is really considered as a normal and necessary one. So, in fact, some of this procedure is being supported by mothers and also, in some cases, by mother-in-laws. And there are also reasons tied to social pressures and also the beliefs about sexual purity. Most of the girls who are not undergone the procedures are usually stigmatized by peers. For fear of that, the girls want to undergo the procedure, even if they know the law prohibits it. For example, in one of the sites, in our sites in Oromia, these uncut girls are usually called by a derogatory term called bubutam. So for fear of this, most of the girls in the sites went to undergo the procedure. There are also other reasons tied to preparation for marriage. In terms of marriage, it is also seen as a rite of passage. That indicates that girl is now ready to get married, so she has to go the procedure. So this is just one of the extract from our community leader, the gender expert, saying that it is really tied to the cultural reasons, and it's done for cultural reasons. When we come to early marriage, there has been significant progress in reduction to child marriage, but the practice is still continuing in some parts of the country, especially in the rural areas. Girls are still getting married very early. When we see the Young Lives data, especially the last round of data, round 7, which has been done in 2024, our findings shows that there is a decline in child marriage from 13% in the older cohort to 5% in the younger cohort. So this is just a cohort comparison, so there is a slight decline in the overall rate. However, this doesn't mean that the younger cohorts are still getting married at a young age, especially 19% of them. 1 in 5, that is about 19% of them are getting married while they are under 18. So this is just a table to show you that. So there are, we have seen that there is a decline in early marriage. However, there is also a shift in marriage trends. Based on our findings, the young people currently are very active. They are very active agents. They can decide everything about themselves, by themselves. Due to this, they also tend to select their own marriage partner on their own initiative. This is also a common trend both in the rural and urban areas, with slight variations. For example, when we take the rural areas, there is this form of marriage, voluntary abduction, where the girl consents to the marriage, especially in the Oromia regions. And most of the couples prefer this kind of marriage to avoid paying the bride's payments. And most of the girls married through this form of marriage, especially between the age 14 and 17, while there is a little delay in the age for the boys to get married, which is 17 to 18. So there is also another trend, which is very much new in Amhara and Tigray sites, in the rural areas, where most of the girls are getting married after finishing their high school, tertiary education. And also the others are also getting married when they don't find jobs. So this is informal cohabitation, which is really a new trend. Actually, informal cohabitation is more of a trend in urban areas currently. So I'm not going to read all of the citations in the interest of time. What drives early marriage? There are different reasons, of course. Some are social, economic. So the first and the most reason is related to education. The limited prospects of educational outcomes and employment opportunities, especially in the rural areas, tend to push most of these young people into marriage. And the other reason is caregivers often want to have grandchildren and see their children established or cared for. And there are also other reasons related to marriage endowments, especially the kesmi or the dowry, which is paid by the parents of the bride to the groom, and the gebara, the bride weights in Oromia, which is paid by the husband of the bride to her family. So in order to escape paying these marriage endowments, some of our young lives children tend to engage in early marriage. And of course, very rare case, but still one of the cases or the reasons that is driving young people is to escape parental arranged marriage. This is actually surprisingly a case in urban sites in Addis Ababa. You can see the second quote saying that he has been forced to get married because he doesn't want to lose his girlfriend to a rich husband that the parents are arranging for. In fact, as we are also seeing the impacts of the conflict and how they are shaping the experiences of these young people, where the conflict is also the other reason driving most of young lives children to marriage, especially for the girls. Parents want them to get married for their safety, and also in conflict-affected areas, some parents mentioned that they want to compensate the lives they have lost during the war. For that reason, they want their children to get married and give birth. So this is the other reason. And again, related to that, there is also this trend of migration in some parts of the rural areas. So to avoid the risky migration that these girls are going to take, their parents rather, even if they are not ready, they still prefer early marriage over that kind of risky migration. These are some of the reasons that are pushing the girls to marry early. In fact, there are also some of the young lives who are also delaying marriage because of different reasons. For example, when getting married, they are expected to buy to pay these marriage transactions, which I've said on one hand is also pushing the marriage, and on the other hand is also delaying. For example, the GESMI, the dowry payment in Tigray, has increased from 1,500 to 300 in 2025. And similarly, the private or the Gabera in Oromia has quadrupled from 10,000 to 40,000. So to avoid these things, due to these things, since they are expected to buy or to provide these marriage endowments, and they don't have that thing to do because of living in these economic uncertainties, they still delay the marriage. And the other issue is the lack of essential resources. When marriages are arranged formally, parents are expected to give resources to the newlyweds, as you might know. And in rural areas, they give livestock or a plot of land where they can establish their separate households and lead their own lives. But this has not been the case recently, and for fear of that, most of the young people are delaying the marriage. In fact, there is also inflation issue and shifts in social expectations and marriage norms. In the past, parents used to arrange the marriages of their children, but currently they prefer to invest in the education of their children, where can they become self-independent and engage in their own employment opportunities. And I will directly pass to the sexual and reproductive health. When we see the extent of awareness and knowledge of sexual and reproductive health, we see young people are getting this awareness knowledge from two different sources. The first one is the formal source, especially from schools and school clubs, where SRH information is integrated into the normal biology class and also the gender clubs. And also in some schools there are health extension workers collaborating with these gender clubs to provide the necessary SRH information and awareness. And the other source is the media, radio, TV, and social media. Actually, radio is the case, typically the case for rural young people, while the other social media, different platforms, as you can see, Facebook and TikTok, they are typically an attribute of urban areas. So there are also health facilities from the health facilities in clinics, health centers, health courses, where these youth get user-friendly services, especially on counseling and also video education. These are some of the formal where they give access information to SRH, and also there are also some governmental and non-governmental NGOs that are working on this issue specifically, using the existing community level programs and campaigns. And there are also other informal sources, especially these young people get some knowledge about it from older siblings and peers, where they provide especially information about puberty and menstruation for both boys and girls. There is also this trend of peer-to-peer education programs that has been led by health professionals for young people between the age 15 and 24, where they can access information and awareness about different issues. And as a recent initiative within this umbrella, there are peer educators that are also raising awareness about cervical cancer screening, not actually in all parts of the young life sites, but this has been the case in two sites in Tigray and Sidama, which is urban. And there is also an information, the family and community are also informal source of information for some of the young people. So there is this cultural taboo that is hindering these parents from fully engaging with their children and talking about these sexual and reproductive issues. These are just some of the citations for the respective source of information, so I'm not going to read it in the interest of time. However, there are variations as to how these young people are accessing information about SRH. Based on our findings, we came across that some are, especially when we come to menstruation for the girls, some of the girls are very well informed during their first periods, while others have very limited knowledge, and that can be a shock, especially when they first experience it. In such cases, there are some NGOs providing emergency sanitary pads in some of the school, which is not really the case for all the sites, and also really a problem for sites in conflict-affected regions. And when we see by gender, both boys and girls appear to have similar knowledge about SRH, especially when they are 15, but this understanding starts to vary when they become of age. Like, for example, when they are 19, the boys tend to be more knowledgeable than the girls. And again, married men seem to have very limited knowledge about contraceptives and general SRH issues, while again, those in urban areas are slightly better informed. Where do these young people access the SRH services? Generally, many young people start using contraceptives after marriage and proving their fertility. You know, in Ethiopia, once you get married, you are expected to prove your fertility first, and then after having one or more children, you might be required to use contraceptive. So this is similar with our findings that most of the girls in our sample start using the contraceptive either after having one or two children. And there are few cases of girls who started using in their teens before marriage while they are in a relationship. Where do they access these services? They mostly access it from government health facilities, private health facilities, and to a certain extent in pharmacies, which are the main sources. And even these are the main sources. The access varies depending on the availability and the user preference. So based on the user preference, for example, if someone to access contraceptive fails, there are also others who want to use implants. So it varies. The access also varies on their
based on their preference. Again, the pattern of contraception also varies. Unmarried women, in relationship always tend to use post pills, which is taken after sexual intercourse, and condoms, while married women use the other available sources I've mentioned above, and also calendar methods. There are some challenges accessing SRH services. Of course, the first and most mentioned factor is the war and the conflict. Most of the SRH services have been disrupted by the war in conflict-affected areas, forcing some of the young people to buy from private facilities. As we know, most of the SRH services were supposed to be for free, but due to the disruption of the services by the war, some of them are forced to buy it, to incur additional costs in buying from other service providers. And again, there is this fear of sterility or fertility. There is an assumption among young women that certain contraceptives can cause infertility, and due to that, they don't want to use it. There is also other health impact of it. For example, some types of contraceptives are seen to have negative impacts, like hair loss or continuous bleeding. Some were mentioning that they were experiencing a continuous bleeding after using some sort. As you can see in this quotation, some women experience bleeding after placing an IUCD, and they will get it removed within the month if the bleeding continues. This is what the maternal and child health expert in rural Tigray was saying. Of course, there is also a cultural aspect of it to why they are not using. Husband's dominance and limited knowledge is also the other reason. Husbands most often want to have more children and do not allow their wives to use the contraceptives. On the other hand, there are also some husbands who are not well informed about the subject matter, and they don't want to own it as their own and leave the subject completely to their wives. And there are also others who want to get pregnant so that they can get married. So they want to prove their fertility, and then the marriage comes. There are, as you know, there is also these religious beliefs and some communities that prohibit the use of contraceptives. When I pass to the maternal and child health, early parenting trend generally, there is a decline in rates of early parenting based on our around 7 young lives quantitative data. Only 7% of younger women had child by the age 19 compared to the 18 older cohort women. So there is a general decline in rates of early parenting. Access to MCH services, overall, starting with the time when we did our last round of qualitative survey in 2019, that means 6 years ago, overall there is an improvement in access to MCH services, and there are also multiple service providers being placed in different areas, including government, health institutions, hospitals, health centers, health boards, family guidance association, and also to a certain extent non-governmental organizations providing these services. Actually, there are a range of MCH services provided, starting with antenatal, postnatal health care to nutrition and immunization. I don't want to go into details of it. You can find it from the report. And this is all done through the strong work of the health extension workers, where the health extension workers raise awareness by visiting the homes, and also there is this women monthly forums where they gather different women and discuss about the issue. When we see the institutional deliveries, and home births. Generally, institutional deliveries are increasing currently, but that doesn't mean there are still some parts of the country that are practicing the home births. For example, in the most rural areas, in the remote rural areas, there are mothers who are giving birth at home. There could be a different reason to this, and this includes, for example, most of them, when we asked them, they said that when their labor is short and when they don't face prolonged labor pains, they prefer to give it, to have their child at home. And also there is this lack of information, especially for first-time mothers, on where to give birth and the general information about child care. And there are still others, even if they have the information, there are still others who prefer traditional birth practices. And also, the first and most reason is tied to transportation, especially in conflict-affected areas. Most of the ambulances have not been working. Because of that, most of the mothers are forced to give birth at home. There is also variation in MCH experiences, especially young women in rural areas still have complaints. Though we said there is a general increase or improvement in general MCH services, there are some women in rural areas who have problems with that. For example, it is tied to the absenteeism of the health professionals and also the medications and the general kits that are necessary for this service. So due to lack of all these facts, there is a problem of MCH services in rural areas. Fathers from both courts, young and old court, in rural and urban areas have limited involvement generally in MCH services, and there are a few of them who are following or accompanying their wives to the health centers during the antenatal health care, and also others who purely leave the issue to the women. However, again, when we see the urban fathers, they are better involved in this issue. There are also problems related to accessing MCH services, as we have said. The war and the conflict issue is cross-cutting across all the topics we are talking here. And also, there is also lack of incentives and support to institutional deliveries. Institutional deliveries have been there since 2013, if I'm not mistaken. But currently, due to different factors, especially due to inflation and also due to conflict and ongoing wars currently in some parts of the country, this has been terminated, and this is again discouraging mothers from giving birth at the health centers. There is also lack of comprehensive antenatal services and resources for women, which have been reported many times, that there is no laboratories and medications and other required tests and health professionals. And also ambulance is an issue, especially due to regular fuel shortage and also insecurity in some parts of the country that is affecting the general MCH services. So these have been some of the problems we have come across, and we came across some proposed recommendations by topics. For example, for FGM, I think we are saying that stigma. The underlying cultural norms are really the problem. So it is good, for example, to address the stigma and discrimination, especially for unmarried girls, that when they are uncut, that they are isolated from the community. So it's good to raise awareness about during using different campaigns. And also it's good to engage boys and men, because as we have been saying, both in SRH and MCH services, the involvement of the men and the boys is very limited, so it's good to engage them. And also, As we might know, some of the reasons that are driving early marriage are the economic matter issues. So it's good, for example, to target economic incentives or conditional cash transfers for families to create economic opportunities for young people, so that they don't they are not pushed to get married very early. And it's also good to reestablish government and community efforts, especially in conflict-affected areas that have been terminated. When we come to SRH, it's good, this initiation, the current initiative of peer-to-peer education or peer-to-peer educator is there, but I think it's good to expand that, especially in the rural areas and conflict-affected areas, by providing targeted programs and training local peer educators. I think I don't have to go in detail to all of this because you have it at hand with you, and also good to provide a comprehensive program that integrates menstrual awareness into the national curriculum, because the problem related to menstruation is really an issue for some of the girls, because there are some girls in some parts of the country that are not going to school or that are terminating school during their menstrual periods. So because of that, it is good to target a comprehensive program that can reduce the absenteeism of girls from school. Let me directly go to the MCH. So it's good to, again, empower the husbands and the fathers to participate in antenatal and postnatal care to address discriminatory gender norms and strengthen general MCH outcomes. It's good to develop community-based awareness to promote, especially institutional delivery, improve the antenatal and postnatal care, and also good to improve the general access to MCH services in conflict-affected areas and rural areas. And again, specifically for conflict-affected areas, it's good to restore MCH services in rural and conflict-affected areas. I thank you. Before I close my presentation, as we know, these topics are, as I said, are very much interlinked. For example, we know the root causes of it. Most of them are driven by gender inequalities, poverty, and social norms. So there is this cycle of impact. For example, when a girl undergoes FGM, it is high likely that she is going to get married very early, which leads her to have a child very early, and then drop out of school, have very limited knowledge about SRH and MCH services. So it is very much interlinked, and it kind of continues the cycle of poverty. Because of that, programs that need to address this problem should address them together, not together. Like, for example, when eliminating FGM, we are also addressing the problems of early marriage. I thank you for listening.
Yes,